Alright guys, this is a video that's probably going to piss you off or upset you, but I'm talking about 12 most boring fragrances. This is part 1 and there's potentially going to be a part 2 later on. We'll start off with part 1 now and I'm going to talk to you about my most boring fragrances. And even though I don't hate these fragrances like I hate some other fragrances, but something about these fragrances are really boring. And they kind of not want, they don't call me, like come wear me kind of a thing, you know? Sometimes fragrances you really love, you love the smell of, and you keep wanting to wear them over and over again. These ones, I just forgot about them and don't even think about them twice. So find out about my 12 most boring fragrances coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, today I'm talking about the most boring fragrances. You know, there are fragrances out there that I really love. For example, on this last trip I did to London, I ended up buying really instantly a couple of different fragrances, which I spoke about, I'm not going to get into. But I've had these fragrances here for a while. Some of these were blind. I don't hate these fragrances, as I said. They're just really boring. They're not exciting fragrances, and because of that, they don't call me, like wear me kind of a thing, you know? I've already discussed all of this stuff about how fragrances end up calling me, what the fragrances that are like really amazing that I keep wearing over and over again. These I've bought and I've put aside and never really came back to. Once in a while I come back to and feature in videos and things like that. But sadly, they mostly get forgotten about. And some of these might be some of your favorite fragrances, but for me, they're really boring. And again, I don't hate these fragrances like I hate other fragrances, but maybe a couple of them I do hate. So why don't we go ahead and get started with Tom Ford's Electric Cherry. I've already spoken about this particular fragrance. So even though I hate this one and I don't hate the others, although maybe I might hate a few others as well, this one is a really boring fragrance. It's kind of why I hate this one. You know, when I first smelled it at Neiman Marcus in San Francisco here, I thought this was really exciting, but the more I wore it, the less I liked it, and it's a really boring fragrance. And also, as I mentioned in my review for Electric Cherry with cherry smoke, and get this, I haven't featured cherry smoke in this video because I don't hate it as much as I hate this one. It's just a really boring fragrance and it reminds me of shampoo, or you know, even something like a body wash that's kind of fruity and kind of, you know, fun and playful and things like that. So according to the notes, it's Morello cherry with ginger, jasmine, sambac. There's Ambrettolide, which is a musk, and there's some pink peppercorn. But for me, the actual texture wearing of this fragrance feels like I've either lathered on some shampoo or some body wash. So very boring fragrance. I come to expect more exciting fragrances from Tom Ford, but this one is a sad fragrance. Definitely one that I really don't like at all. And again, this is not a video about fragrances I don't like. There might be a few I don't like and I consider them very boring. Moving on to the house of FREDERIC MALLE. It's Uncut Gem. Both of these two fragrances that I'm discussing are under Estee Lauder. Both of them are very expensive and both of them are very boring. So this Uncut Gem, launched last year by FREDERIC MALLE, was supposed to be the latest fragrance from, what's his name, Maurice Rossel, in a trio of musky fragrances. He did Dante Bras, he did Musk Ravageur, which is an all-time favorite, and then now Uncut Gem. With the price tag of over $400 for this fragrance, it's about $450 with tax. It's actually less expensive considering the fact that Tom Ford's Electric Cherry in 50 ml turns out to be more expensive than Uncut Gem. But still, a very boring fragrance. I don't hate it as much as I hate Electric Cherry. Just a very boring fragrance, and it doesn't really call me. It's not exciting, and the fact that it's so expensive, I feel like I've been taken advantage of by this brand who's trying to sell me some amazing fragrance, but it's not really. I mentioned in my review for this, I think I said if it was in a bottle for Hermes or Cartier for like $120 for 100 ml, I would be all over this fragrance, but for me it's really boring, and for the price tag it's not really worth it. But let me tell you a little bit about the fragrance. It's bergamot with ginger, angelica root, nutmeg, magnolia, cistus labdanum, frankincense, ambrettolide crystal, and musk. So apparently this was a fragrance that Maurice Rossel wore and it's his personal fragrance, and they've launched it as a fragrance at Frederic Mall, but damn, he should have kept this fragrance to himself because it's really a boring fragrance to me. So what are your thoughts on the last two fragrances I spoke to you about? Both of them are under Estee Lauder, Electric Cherry from Tom Ford and Uncut Gem from the house of Frederic Mall. Let me know. So, moving on to the house of Maison Margiela. We spoke about Maison Margiela recently, and many of you love this fragrance and mention it all the time, over and over and over again. This is one of my most boring fragrances ever. It's Jazz Club from the house of Maison Margiela. Not sure why this is so boring to me. I'm expecting boozy tobacco that's really in my face. For me, it acts like a light, creamy gourmand with vanillic touches and little light booziness here and there. The fragrance also is very linear. I don't see a lot of changes happening throughout the fragrance. So just boring. Really a boring offering from this house, but people seem to really love it. I don't get it. I'm just not an exciting fragrance for me, and that's why I usually listed low in list of videos. Like for Maison Margiela, I even left it off because yesterday when I launched my video for On a Date, I left this one off because I just don't crave it. I don't want to wear it. And sometimes when I do feature it, it's ranked really low, but a lot of you seem to like this one. What is it about this that you really like? For me, as I said, it's very linear, not a lot of exciting things happening in this fragrance, and everything seems like it's like really like blended so much. Nothing really stands out. Like you're smelling tobacco, but you're smelling it with rum, Styrax, vanilla, pink pepper, so it's all kind of blended together for one smell rather than, okay, I can pick out the tobacco, I can pick out the rum, I can pick out the vanilla, and so on. So for me, Jazz Club is an uber boring fragrance. In fact, I have a video on the channel of alternatives for Jazz Club. If you're curious to go catch that video, go catch it. But in all honesty, this video could have been on that video as well. I left it off because I also don't like this fragrance because it reminds me of Jazz Club. It's also another boring fragrance from the house of INITIO Parfums. It's Side Effect. So Side Effect is one of my least favorite fragrances from this house. It's once again very similar, similar to Jazz Club. It's a kind of a boring tobacco, rum, vanilla, cinnamon, spicy kind of a tobacco fragrance. Maybe it's a little more exciting than Jazz Club, but once again, it's not as exciting, and that's why I left it off of the alternatives for the fragrance, the Jazz Club, and it just doesn't do it for me. There's fragrances from this house like the Musk one. Damn, drawing a blank with the name. It's actually even more exciting than this, and it should be probably, and with some people it's probably as a more boring fragrance, but for me it's something about Side Effect, Jazz Club, and this kind of like style of tobacco and boozy fragrance concept just is not working because everything kind of gets blended too much together and nothing really shouts out at me and nothing really gets exciting. And I want my fragrances to be a little exciting, unless, like especially if it's a tobacco boozy fragrance, unless it's not supposed to be exciting. For some of you, probably Molecule 1, Molecule 2, things like that are not exciting. Yes, I can see why those can't be exciting, but that's the kind of fragrance those are. You know what you're gonna have. But when I'm going for something like a tobacco and a booziness like rum or cognac, I want to be excited, and both Jazz Club and Side Effect do not excite me whatsoever, and that's why I consider them boring. But do you guys get excited for those two fragrances? Let me know. Put some comments down so I can find out. Alright, here's a boring fragrance as a designer. Yeah, I'm not targeting all designers today, but there are some niche and there are some designers here. And this is one of the most boring designer fragrances. And once again, I don't hate it. This is not a video of hates except for that electric cherry. This one is just really boring and flat. It's a L'Homme from the house of YSL, launched in 2006. I don't know, nothing too exciting about this one. Recently you guys also mentioned I left this off of the ginger video. It's because it's really a boring ginger fragrance. When I'm smelling ginger in the authentic form, the actual spice itself, I'm not getting that here whatsoever. It's once again very, very flat and faint and light touches of all the notes together thrown in. So it makes for a very unexciting wear. And it's the kind of fragrance that I don't want to kind of crave and pull for and wear. But according to the notes, it's lots of ginger with tonka, there's spices, bergamot, violet leaves, lemons, pepper, cedar, vetiver, basil. You know, at one time in 2006 when this first launched, this was a very exciting fragrance. I think it's just gotten watered down. And that's why it's not very exciting anymore. I don't know what the deal is, but are you a fan of this one? Now, on the other hand, La Nuit de l'Homme that came after this is actually really a fun fragrance. And for me, even though it's gotten watered down, it still smells really great. Notes do jump out at me and do smell exciting. But for this one, a very disappointing release from this house, at least as of late. Anyway, L'Homme, it's boring. It's not a fragrance I crave for, but do you crave for that one? Do let me know. Put a comment down so I can find out. Moving on to the house of MANCERA, it's Black Gold. Another really, really boring offering from a house. For me, I don't know why this is so boring, but it's not exciting. Because a lot of MANCERA fragrances do tend to be very exciting. They tend to be very beefy, intense, uber beast mode and things like that. And here, it's just a really flat fragrance with kind of like notes that are not working wonderfully together. So they've thrown in oud in the mix, which because it's MANCERA, they're going to throw in oud, but why the heck do you have oud with all the notes in here? There's lavender, there's cinnamon, there's violet, there's jasmine, leather, marine notes, woods, nutmeg, citruses, white musk, patchouli, and of course that oud as I mentioned. Maybe it's the marine notes that's really bothering me here, but everything seems unexciting and it seems like it's just a very boring kind of a release and also kind of going into a mass direction, not very niche to me. Maybe you're a fan of this one, but this one does not excite me whatsoever. For me, I find it to be very, very boring. And I love lavender and I love cinnamon and I love all the notes in here are really, really great notes. But for some reason, it's really disappointing here with this. And it makes for a very boring wear and I never crave it. But I do have to be honest, this bottle is actually really, really beautiful. I like that whole matte black finish on it. So at least it has a nice bottle going for it. So this next fragrance going to the house of by Kilian or Kilian Paris. This is Moonlight in Heaven. Very boring fragrance. I've tried to really, really get into this fragrance. I like the idea of it. But once again, just a really boring, completely unexciting fragrance whatsoever. Disappointing? Yes. I don't hate it. Try to really, really like this one. It just doesn't do it for me. And it's got very interesting notes. It's got mango, coconut, grapefruit, vetiver, rice, pink pepper, tonka. But everything seems subdued as far as notes goes. Nothing in here really screams out. And all the notes like the mango, coconut, grapefruit, rice, kind of seems on the same level, so they haven't really put something a little louder than the other. So nothing is really shouting at me and calling me and saying, hey, this stuff smells great, wear it, it's really, really yummy. So unfortunately, I've really, really tried to love it. I've even actually reviewed this fragrance, but for me, it's a disappointing release. I wanted to really, really love it. The kind of notes in here are really, really unique, but for me, unexciting, completely unexciting fragrance. At least for me, the blue bottle is really, really gorgeous. I really love the blue bottle. But Moonlight in Heaven, are you a fan of it? Let me know if you are into that fragrance and what do you like about it. I find it to be very boring. And to reiterate boring fragrances, some of you might mention that, you know, fragrances that are like molecular or skin scents and things like that are really, really boring. I can totally see that those can be boring, but those are specifically made to be like that. And a lot of these fragrances I'm talking about today are not meant to be boring like that, if that makes sense to you guys. So for example, this next fragrance from the house of XERJOFF, and I'm a big fan of XERJOFF. I find this fragrance to be uber boring and it doesn't even do the job that I wanted it to do. It's part of a trio of coffee fragrances, but this is Golden Mocha. First of all, I don't get much coffee with this one whatsoever, and because of that it becomes for this kind of peppery, oudy kind of a citrus something or rather that I don't really crave for. The other two fragrances in the collection, it's golden, I forgot the name, it's golden green, golden Dala, and then it's golden Mocha. Dala is the most coffee, and the golden green is more like a green coffee, which is less coffee, but really an exciting green fragrance. But for some reason, golden Mocha is boring as heck, and I really just don't get excited about it and don't crave for it. If you go catch my videos and you see any kind of a ranking for fragrances and it features golden Mocha, you'll see that it's ranked really low because I just don't like the fragrance. It's boring as heck, as I said, and this is a video about boring fragrances. I don't hate the fragrance. Again, I don't hate a lot of these fragrances. In fact, I find them to be okay releases, but they just are really, really boring, and I just don't get excited wearing them. But let me know if you're a fan of this one, because there's a lot going on with it. And I with a name like Golden Mocha, I was expecting like in-your-face coffee. And even though they mention coffee in the notes, I don't get much coffee. It's a very spicy, almost peppery citrus fragrance with like light ambers and some incense and things like that. And I think even they don't mention pepper in here, and I think it's the incense that's kind of like acting a bit like pepper. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Golden Mocha. I find it to be very boring. Now, the next fragrance is from the house of DIOR. It's Oud Rosewood, and I can't find my bottle. Recently, I've been starting to, you know, box some things up, and I think because I'm gonna have to open up the wall here, and a lot of fragrances have kind of gone missing or something, and I don't have this particular fragrance, sadly. As I was making my notes and I was pulling the fragrances, I don't. But Oud Rosewood from the Privé collection from DIOR, I find to be uber boring as heck. I feel like they had several oud fragrances already. Why bother making Oud Rosewood? Purple Oud is nice. I really like it. Oud Ispahan is nice. I like it. Leather Oud is also very animalic, although I feel like the fragrances have gotten watered down. But for me, Oud Rosewood, one of the most boring oud fragrances from any brand, personally for me. I felt like they were just doing some kind of a cash cow thing here. We're gonna take the oud into a different direction. We're gonna add sandalwood to it. It's rosewood with oud. And then we're gonna throw in some fruits like raspberry and quince. For me, it doesn't really get fruity much. Maybe in the dry down it becomes a little fruitier. It's mostly woods. The rosewood is in there. Of course, the oud is in there. It's a bit, not a bit, it's totally like a Western oud fragrance rather than like animalic here. And then I feel like in addition to these notes, there's also some saffron thrown in there. I feel like there's some leather, but for me, very, very boring. Very boring, I don't crave for it. At least for me, Purple Oud is also a bit boring, but it's the kind of fragrance that I crave to wear, whereas here with Oud Rosewood, really boring, and I don't ever crave to wear it. So it's a disappointment. Let me know if you're a fan of that one. And again, I'm hoping I'm not pissing you guys off or hurting your feelings, but this is just fragrance. It's very subjective. I'm sure there's a lot of fragrances that I like that you don't like either. But moving on, we just spoke about this last week. This is a really boring fragrance from the house of LABO. In fact, there's a few other fragrances from this house I'm going to highlight maybe in future videos, but for now we're talking about Santal 33. So Santal 33 is a love-hate fragrance, and mostly a hate. Sometimes I kind of crave it. And again, last week we were talking about polarizing, how polarizing it is. A lot of people love it, and a lot of people hate it, and a lot of people call it and say that it smells like pickle juice and things like that. So for me, it's mostly the latter in the hate part, not the love part. Once in a while, I feel like it smells great, and the fact that it's also been duped and copied and inspired from so much, it's just I even don't like the fragrance whatsoever and get bored of it. I feel like as a fragrance, they did a good job. It's just something about it just rubs me the wrong way. So that's kind of why it doesn't really call me. But for me, this is all about Australian sandalwood, cypriol, leather, cedarwood, ambroxan, cardamom, iris, and violet. Are you a fan of Santal 33? Let me know, put a comment down so I can find out. So moving on to the house of Diptyque. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Diptyque, but this is a really boring fragrance, sadly. I don't know why they released this one. They already have Fleur de Peau, which I absolutely love, but this one, Orpheon, you know, I wore it quite a bit and I'm just really bored of it. It's not really exciting for me. They also just launched Opsis, which is also a musky powdery fragrance. Not as powdery as this, because this is a powder bomb, and Fleur de Peau is also a powder bomb. But for me, I don't know, this one doesn't do it for me, where it doesn't really excite me, and it kind of is a very, not linear in the sense where everything stays the same, but not a lot of things happen. It becomes kind of boring, and it's all basically powder with some aromatics and spices spices thrown in, and then of course there's a bit of a metallic juniper berry thrown in there as well. So there's not a lot going on with this one. Light floral touches, and of course woody touches as well. But Orpheon, I think, is a boring fragrance. I don't know, some of you might like this one, and I just can't seem to like really embrace it and totally fall in love with it. Are you a fan of Orpheon? Are you a fan of Diptyque? I know it doesn't get a lot of love, although I feel like it does, because God, they have so many stores everywhere. We've got 4 stores in the San Francisco Bay Area. We've got 2 in San Francisco now, and a few others. Maybe there's 5 stores here. So most likely it does have a lot of love, otherwise they wouldn't have all these stores. But let me know if you're a fan of Diptyque, and let me know if you are a fan of Orpheon. So last but not least, I'm talking about Percival from the house of Parfums de Marly. So once again, just like a few other fragrances like Jazz Club, where I said if you ever go watch my rank list, it's always ending up at the bottom. This to me from the house of Parfums de Marly is the bottom. Like, it's the most boring. For me, it acts like a designer fragrance. I mean, I like the style, but since this came out and before this came out, I should say, before this came out and after this came out, there are so many fragrances like that have come out. I'm just so bored of this style, period. So, and even though Percival from Parfums de Marly is really intense and long lasting, it's a boring fragrance and I don't really crave to wear it, if that makes sense. It's very aromatic. It's also a bit metallic. Lots of citruses, lots of herbs and some spices as well. But there's definitely lots of lavender here with geranium. So it's an aromatic herbal balm, but lots of mandarin with bergamot. And then of course there's violet here with spices and musk. To me, it's kind of in that ballpark of Sauvage, EDT, EDP, Parfum, Elixir, so many of them. So I feel like I'm kind of bored with this particular style of blue fragrance, and it just doesn't call me. It's not exciting. This could be also a perfect dumb reach fragrance, but it's quite pricey, although you can find it at the discounters for less. So it's that kind of a fragrance. You can't, you know, it doesn't excite me. There's a lot going on here with the spices and herbs. It's just not the kind of stuff I want to wear over and over again. But you might be a fan of Percival, and as a woman also, this one does lean more masculine because of the notes, because a lot of the fragrances in the men's collection do seem very unisex, but this particular one to me is definitely masculine leaning. But if you're a fan of Percival, let me know, put a comment down so I can find out. Anyway, those are 12 boring fragrances for me. As I said, I will do a part 2 sometime down the line in the future, but let me know your thoughts on these fragrances, and also let me know, put a comment down and let me know what are boring fragrances for you. What doesn't really excite you? What you bought and you just never wear it because it's not, you know, fun. It's not exciting to wear. It's boring. Put a comment down so I can find out. Anyway, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.